Part of the reason we're doing what we're doing is to give people a sense of confidence. All right? Scripture says, please make sure everybody gets a copy of that. Perfect love drives out fear. And fear can be a very limiting problem when it comes to relationships. Fear shackles us. We can't move. We lack flexibility. We can't negotiate. We can't maneuver. All right? And so fear and guilt are the two things we have to constantly be aware of as we function as people of God. Now, when we look at what God has given us, there are several very important issues. Number one is your personality. Number two is your passion. Number three is your leadership style. And number four are your gifts. Not in order of importance. Your personality, your passions, you might even call it your working past, and your gifts of the Holy Spirit. We're going to look at your personality today. Next Sunday, we're going to start going through the spiritual gifts to find out what God has given us. But it will always be in combination. Your personality, your leadership style, your passions, and your gifts all fit together. They have to harmonize. If, for instance, you are a very quiet, soft-spoken person, and your gifts come out that evangelism is your primary gift, you're going to have internal conflict. Because how are you going to fulfill your calling that God has given you if you do not have the gift and the personality to handle that? So it requires you to think through, how do you implement that gift that God has given you, even if your personality or your leadership style doesn't seem to match that. Okay? So it's all done with the idea of, balance. We've done that before. We have to keep in mind all of the factors that are involved in how do we find God's will for us. It helps us to understand why we have conflict within the body of Christ. It helps us to understand why we have tensions inside of our relationships at times. It also helps us to prepare for the selection of a new pastor. Why would looking at your personality traits be important as you look for a pastor in a year's time? Shoot.
Well, you would probably tend to pick someone similar to yourself.
Just like me. Just like me. Let's at least say we ought to at least think it through. Not that I would put anybody's personality style down, but I believe when you go through this, you'll say, I see now how that relates to why things might have happened in the past that happened, and how we need to take into consideration how to move forward. And you'll do the same thing when we get to the gifts. The gifts, the personality, the leadership styles are all intertwined, and they have to all be considered when we find a new pastor. What do we need to look for as we look for a pastor? Well, first of all, we have to know who we are. Bob said he's going to choose someone just like himself because he thinks that's the best way to handle things. But if we don't know who he is, and we don't understand how that works, then we can't understand how it fits into the rest of the body. How do we know how the leadership team, the advisory council is working? Well, we have to know who they are before we go into the search, because we need to find someone that not only fits within that framework, but brings a complementary. Complementary doesn't mean, oh, you're doing so good, or you're looking so good this afternoon. That's not complimentary, all right? It means that it fits the piece that might be missing in our body. So it comes in and gets combined in a healthy way to make that happen. But if we don't know ourselves first, we can't find that piece that's missing and make it fit and make it work. Okay? So, having said that, in the overall shape of what we're doing, this is practical stuff. All right? And the reason it's practical, because every leadership style has both a set of positives and a basic set of negatives. All right? You can't say, I've found the perfect leadership style, because it does everything for everybody. Okay? So when you get done, we're going to go through a list of questions. You're going to take on the back. You turn the page over. I'll ask you some questions. You'll either put a check mark or an X mark. Yes, it's me, or no, it's not me. And you might find you have more of one or the other. And we'll kind of go through a little test on whether or not you have a particular personality group that you need to identify. Okay? You're never one single type. It's like one is your primary. There might be one or even two that you sort of use once in a while, and then a couple others that are just not a part of you at all. Okay? Here's the reason why this is important. We are in a family. And there was nobody say amen? Okay. We are in a family, but we are also in an army. Okay? One of the things we're going to do is we're going to define what our mission is and how we're going to organize ourselves to accomplish the mission, the task. We have a family grouping. We have a task. Relationship, task. All right? Some personality styles are perfectly tuned to getting the task done. Others are more carefully tuned to keeping relationships stable. We need to balance off those that are good at task and those that are good at relationship. Okay? So I'm taking the pieces that's of paper that I handed out. Anybody not have one? All right? We're going to go through some of the ones. Now, in your evaluation forms, the ones from the assessment, you will see the 5 personality styles using names, sanguine and whatever else. I've never been able to make sense out of those names. I'm sorry. Those are not words that fit into my vocabulary. I don't have a picture for what those are. So I'm using a different set of descriptions of the personality styles that fit my way of thinking. And first of all is the turtle. Now you see, that's a nice clear picture. I don't even need to explain to you what a turtle is. Okay? But the turtle personality style is one that basically becomes very self-defensive, very protective. If you do like I do and highlight the most important words in each sentence, I put in here, tries to, quote, underline, stay out of conflict. Don't let me get involved in this thing. It's somebody else's problem. Somebody needs to fix this. But it ain't going to be me. All right? If you were of a turtle type mentality, personality style, I'm saying, if you had the turtle personality style, the first thought to come into your head is, this is hopeless. Okay? I don't have any way to come out of this looking like a winner. Now, in the overall scope of the task relationship chart, where would the turtle come in closest? Does it do anything to keep relationships strong? Does it do anything to accomplish tasks? Huh? Ideas? No, not really. Nice people, but they tend to not be all that helpful. They're down here sort of at the bottom, at the corner. Now, turtle personality is somebody we need. All right, it's not that we don't, because a turtle, while I want to make sure I say this right. A turtle is a person who has to be convinced that there's a reason to move forward. You have to coax the turtle out of the shell. That means that somebody has to really care and really learn what the turtle is about and try and find a way to win them over. All right? To encourage them to be involved. We have a number of turtles in our church. Okay? I'm not making senseless allegations here. We have people who are spectators. Do you understand what that means? They come on Sunday, they leave, they just have difficulty feeling like they want to buy into or want to participate in making the church stronger. Okay? We have to do the job of encouraging them. It has to be safe. Have you ever had a turtle that you took a little stick and you thumped on his shell, just kept thumping on his shell, just kept thumping on his shell? Where does he pull his head? Deep inside and won't come out. You have to encourage a turtle to find a way to come out and to be involved or to be included. And so one of the things about the personality is there are reasons why they are valuable. It makes the rest of those who are involved work a little harder, but to think through the pluses and the minuses. Why would that be scary for a turtle? Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it's not his diet. If I chose something that he liked better, he might open up quicker. If I chose something that he really enjoyed, maybe. And you have to really care about the turtle to get the turtle to come out and join you. Okay? Doesn't mean that the turtle's bad, but if he stays inside, there will be an increasing sense of frustration and of weakness. That's a problem. What happens when church people start to get frustrated and feeling weak and helpless? They vacate. They vacate. They will not stay. Why do we have roundtable discussions like we had a week ago? Here's what the situation is. You don't have to be afraid. Here, let me answer all your questions. You don't have to be worried about what's being hidden. You don't have to worry about somebody going to get mad at you and throw a whiteboard eraser. My uncle was a school teacher for about 2 weeks. About a week into his first week of class, one of the kids made him so mad, he grabbed an eraser. Back in those days, they made them with wood blocks behind them. And he swung that thing, and it slammed over against the wall on the other side of the school building and just about crowned a kid. And he said, don't have the personality to be a teacher. No, you have to tell a turtle it's okay, it's safe to come out. All right? Now, let's go down to the next one. Do you have any questions about the turtle? You have to understand, a turtle absolutely believes he's got the right choice based on the world that he sees. It's almost impossible to convince a turtle that the world is a safe and happy place to live. All right? Why? The turtle has learned that there are a lot of forces out there that's going to get you. And you have a challenging time trying to convince a turtle, it's okay, we're all going to get through this thing together and it's going to be okay. A turtle can be hard to convince, okay? Going on to the next one, the accommodating is called the teddy bear. See why I like these better than sanguine and morose and whatever else? I like the teddy bear. His intention is to preserve relationships at all cost. So that puts him over here on high on the relationship line, but not very far down this line. You see, he only got this far. Why is that important? We need to realize that the teddy bear, while it's very important that we keep relationships strong, can be a very difficult person to have on your church board. Why?
Because sometimes you need to have the difficult discussions. There are decisions that have to be made that require difficult conversations. And it's okay to have a positive, loving church fight. We know that. We've been talking about that the past couple of weeks. Teddy Bear doesn't want to do that.
No. Don't bother me with the conflict. Let's just make sure everybody gets along. The theme song is, can't we just all get along? Can't we just all get along? The teddy bear is quick to resolve conflict, but not very creative about solving conflict. That sounds like a good person to have around, quick to resolve conflict. Unless there's something that has to be dealt with that requires more creativity. For instance, I went to a church back many years ago that had a very heavy contingent of people who were teddy bear personality styles, and their pastor had left his wife and headed for parts unknown with the church secretary. The teddy bears all stood up and said, can't we just say, Pastor, we forgive you, come back and take care of us? Let's just forgive and forget. If you decide you come back home and you reconcile with your wife and kids, and we'll take you right back. Is that the correct way to handle things? Scripturally? No. But in the personality style, it's very easy to understand why. What's driving let's forgive and forget? The first thing. Remember the two things we're supposed to avoid? Fear and guilt. The teddy bears have a possibility of being so frightened. Well, the turtle does too. I didn't go into that with the turtle, but the teddy bears are afraid that the relationships are going to be broken forever, and they may even have a little bit of guilt because they knew it ahead of time and didn't do anything about it. You've been listening to the news. You heard about a bunch of the scandals about the movie industry and everything. And what's the one thing that keeps coming out over and over? I knew things were happening that weren't healthy, and I didn't do anything to stop it. I didn't take personal responsibility. That's a teddy bear way of taking care of things. It can also be a tendency to blame others, because if we can say, well, that was just their problem and it was somebody else's deal, then we can preserve our relationships. They see people as being very fragile, very easily broken, all right? The temptation is for the teddy bear to take such personal responsibility at maintaining the relationships that they feel inside of themselves, if I don't do my teddy bear thing, nobody else will, and the whole family will fall apart. In a family type relationship, in a husband and wife relationship, one of them has to say, if I don't hold this together, the family is going to fly apart. Okay? A teddy bear can sometimes come across as someone who is just weak, unstable. They can be upset with what's going on, but take no steps to do anything about it. That gives a sense of instability. A teddy bear will stay a teddy bear because they think there's no other way to do it. They just basically feel locked into one personality style. And they tend to give themselves a lot of credit as to being the one who's responsible to make sure it stays together. This is not something God's doing. If I don't do it, nobody else will. The teddy bear, it can be very, very difficult to convince. Now, why do we need teddy bears in our church leadership? Why would this be a very valuable person to have on our staff?
They can often heal relationships.
They can. They're sensitive to what people's needs are sometimes. Like a Geiger counter. You can't see the radiation, but boy, that thing, as soon as it goes off, you know you got a problem. The teddy bear is pretty good about doing a sense and saying, Pastor, youth leader, whatever it is, Sunday school teacher, did you know that there's an issue that somebody is really hurting about? Teddy bears can have a tremendous value within the church if they see what they have been given as a personality as something that came from God to be used in His behalf, to be used in His service, and not just running on fear. A teddy bear who's afraid will not be of much help to you. They will always be saying, don't rock the boat. Whatever it takes, don't make anybody upset. All right? I tend not to be a teddy bear because if I see somebody rocking the boat, the first thing I do is say, stop rocking the boat. It was funny. When I first took one of my marriage and family classes, one of the games that they played, it was a role-playing activity. And the professor would take two of the seminary students. It was very funny. And he'd sneak them off into a room and he'd give them individual roles. One was supposed to be the husband, one was supposed to be the wife, and they're coming into the pastor's office to discuss their problems. All right? And he would give them this whole script of what they were supposed to do. And then the chosen student, in this case it happened to be me, would stand there and try and figure out how to counsel them through their difficulty. We were studying a book by Carl Rogers or something, Rogerian theory of some sort. And the guys came in, sat down at the table, and they began to go at each other. I simply stood up and I said, you either stop doing that to each other or get out of my office. And the professor went, you can't say that. That's not Rogerian. I said, I know. It's Douglasarian. You either keep your mouth under control or you get out of my face. They said, that's very directive. I said, I'm not apologizing for that. We will perform in this office in a way that does not destroy the well-being of somebody else. You either live with those rules or you find somebody else to deal with. It made the guys who were supposed to be playing the roles very uncomfortable. See, a teddy bear would never say that. They might walk out. The teddy bear would say, I got to do something to encourage them to stay. I have to kind of... No, they were doing destructive things to each other. They were doing everything badly. But if they didn't learn to do it better, If I wasn't there to teach them how to do it better, they weren't going to learn anything anyway. A teddy bear is not afraid. Teddy bear is afraid to do that because they're afraid all relationships are too fragile. Okay. Do you have any question about that? You know now I'm a very directive kind of a counselor. Be on guard. Okay. The next one is called the collaborating style or the OWL. The intention of the OWL is to get as many people involved as possible. All right? And that is by defining the conflict, defining the issues that are listed, putting them out on bullet points, point A, point B, point C, point D, putting them not only in numerical order, but order of importance, and then working them through one at a time, finding and carrying out mutually agreeable steps for managing whatever situation they're involved in. Okay? Conflict is not something to be ignored or avoided, but to be turned into a problem-solving situation where everybody grows and understands and learns differently. Where does the OWL form on our chart of task and relationship? It's over on the task, but it's also trying to incorporate all of our relationships. So it probably lays somewhere in here. Somewhere, you can always have different intensities. The distance from the center, this is 0 over here. Nothing's happening there. All right? But if we make some progress on our task, let's say from over here, and we make some progress on our relationships, you've done something on both of our basic issues. All right? The OWL is involved to try and bring consensus. An OWL will never say, all in favor, say aye, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 51%, that's good. Let's go forward. That's too task-oriented. A task-oriented, 51%, let's go. Yeah. But the OWL won't say that. He's more likely to say, or she's likely to say, until we get everybody on board, we're not moving forward. All right, consensus is a very important part. The process of the OWL, and in seeing the positives and the negatives, why would you want an OWL working on your church council or as your pastor?
And I don't know if, maybe you can rephrase it, but I'm trying to say it's almost like they're an outsider because they're looking at a bigger picture and they can help to mediate.
They make good mediators. All right. I mean, they find something of value on both ends, both in the task-oriented and in the relationship-oriented. What happens, let's just pretend, that let's say you've got something where the relationships are really badly fouled up, and you're an OWL person, and you realize your relationships are not getting better. Let's say they're down here in this level. What's the negative side of being an OWL?
Trying to please everybody. You're trying to accommodate everybody.
And nothing gets done.
They also struggle in empowering views, doctrines, and attitudes that are not necessarily right for a particular congregation. If you get an OWL in charge of a congregation that is, well, let's say it's a Wesleyan Armenian congregation, and you get an OWL in charge of it, and a whole bunch of conservative Baptist types start coming to that church, and he wants to listen to their point of view too. Well, no, we're not listening to a Calvinist point of view, period. We're Wesleyan Armenians. Our denomination is not going, this isn't open for discussion. Our denomination believes what it believes. We're not accommodating to that. You know?
Yeah, and an owl would have difficulty doing that.
Yeah, right. They can't.
They would
Yeah,
actually
right.
scale down
Right.
the task to try and accommodate the relationship. You can't have an owl with weak knees.
Then nothing ever gets done.
There you go. Now, if things are up here at this level or higher, then you can get quite a little bit done. But it takes a cooperative effort, a collaborative effort, before an owl can move forward. Now, what it does happen is no matter how much is actually getting done, the result is usually an enthusiastic participation by those who are involved. Why?
Pastor.
What was that?
They make perfect youth pastors.
They do. Extremely good. They get people really to feel good about their performance, about being involved, and being very enthusiastically encouraging. Okay? They just love getting everybody on board at once. All right? But you have to keep in mind, they have to be a principled owl. Okay? Now, we're going to go to the next one. It's called the compromising style. It's called the fox. I love the pictures. All right. The fox is a very interesting one. The fox wants to get something done. So he's willing to put a lot of effort in getting a task accomplished, even if it doesn't come very high over on the relationship side. A fox will take a little bit of a win and mix it with a little bit of a loss, and instead of actually finding a good solution, what's the least that I have to give you to get what I want? Okay? It's almost like a bargaining situation. You scratch my back and I'll itch yours. But I scratched your back. Well, you only asked me to itch yours, not really scratch it. I only want to give you the least amount of help I can give you in order for you to give me what I want. Do you follow? Shh. She loves back rubs, I can tell that. Okay. The fox is a good manipulator. A fox is a good negotiator, and if it says here on the last line, goals are important, but not worthy of pushing too hard. Okay? I don't want to make people over here antagonistic with me. I want to be able to keep the negotiation going, but I don't want to give them any more away than I have to get the job done. Building committees are notoriously filled with foxes. Why? They always have to give up something to get something. All right? Why is having a fox on your board a good idea?
Pragmatic. They're just simply pragmatic.
They get the job done.
If their relationship quotient is high enough, they tend not to be manipulative or perceived as manipulative. They tend not to have any of those issues, and they flat out get stuff done.
Mm-hmm. And you can, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say that it seems like they also tend to be the ones to have a certain level of discernment. They can, maybe that's not the right word, they can see when there are problems because they're maybe just a little bit more untrusting of certain situations.
Yeah.
And they can look at things a little bit different to pick out where there's going to be issues.
Yeah. And I like that, the discernment part of, what they're asking enough questions and they're trying to search for what they can get done to get through the bottleneck. The problem I've got with the fox is they're very, very self-centered. It's me, 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 me. I am going to find the solution. Okay? You will not find a fox who is a dedicated member of the prayer team. They don't know that much about prayer. They don't know how to pray that prayer, thy will be done. We were just talking about that. All right? A fox says, my will, my idea, my... And they can be very pleasant. They can get very much done. But you know what? They almost always come away half-hated. Because they're never completely honest. They're always working the issue. They're always trying to get something for the least amount they have to pay for. On a church board, it is the worst possible person to have on a church board if they've become very dyed-in-the-wool fox, because they will be working behind the scenes to get people on their side, to get the thing that they want. They will always be twisting and turning something to try and get their way, what they see as being the solution. There are two kinds of leaders in the church, okay? You may not have ever heard this actually, but let's talk about it for a second. There are elected leaders, all right? Pretty easy to understand that. And then there are ad hoc leaders. Do you know what ad hoc means? By virtue of office, by virtue of their relationship, they have authority beyond what they've been elected to do. All right? Over and over and over, it is the ad hoc leaders within a church that will cause you more problems than anybody else in the church family, because they know how to work the system. They know who they can go to get somebody worked up. They know who to go to spread that little seed of discontent that will finally get somebody behind them and say, you know, I'm going to back you on that. I think that's the right thing to do. All right? The fox, if he's a fully committed follower of Jesus Christ, can be a blessing beyond measure. He's a great ally. It is a great ally if they understand how God made them. If they don't, these are the ones who come up at the one council meeting that I had to miss because I had family obligations, and decided that they were going to bring this to an issue and had $1,000 removed from my salary without having any discussion ahead of time. You know why? They'd already decided. He'd already been around through the group and gotten them all on track. All right? We've got to show this preacher who's got altogether too much going on here, who really has the authority. And the fox went around behind and made sure that everybody was on board, and without ever having it on the agenda, without any other knowledge or discussion, suddenly brought it up and $1,000 went bye-bye. All right? It's fox. Be careful of the fox. It's the last council meeting I ever missed. I will cancel a council meeting before I miss one. All right, we must never compromise with evil, but compromise with each other. It's no sin to be a fox. Don't think of that. It's only if you become obsessed with your own personality style. Okay, now we're going to jump for a second to the final one. It's called the competing style, which is the shark. The intention of the shark is to win. And a win for a shark is always task-oriented. Not so much any consideration over here, very little consideration on the relationship end. It's very much like the teddy bear is considering relationship separate from getting the task done, the shark is always considering getting the task done, no matter how anybody feels about it. That sort of makes sense on the other side of the span. And if you get a shark that really knows how to do things, I once had a pastor friend of mine who got voted out of his church many years before, and he started his own congregation as a kind of a separate group, and he designed it so that nobody could ever throw him out again. He was a shark. A shark will make sure he will never have a chance to lose. He will always put himself in a position to win. And if somebody came on his board that might have had a disagreement with him, they weren't on the board very long before they got slid off, and somebody who wouldn't argue with him came on. Do you follow? A shark is all about task. The congregation, basically after about 30 years or so, got the idea there was nothing they could ever do to change the pattern. So they just gave up. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. Because a pastor who is a shark, a leader who is a shark, doesn't really care, because he's convinced that the population as a whole, the body as a whole, is confused, weak, unfaithful, wrong, or selfish. So if they've passed judgment on everybody outside of their own little circle, it's okay to do what you want to do because you're the only ones who really know how to do it. Right. Another little story. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon, but when I was in Iowa, there was a family of about 8 people who had decided that everybody else in the congregation was weak, confused, unfaithful, wrong, or selfish, and therefore unspiritual. So when the pastor who had been there ahead of me was asked to leave, was asked by their group to leave, and refused, they called in the state to have him removed as pastor, claiming that he was doing all kinds of things that were wrong, unethical, and unpastor-like, none of it true. And the state came in and said, we're going to have a meeting with you and decide what to do. And he had to quit because he knew the cards were stacked against him. He couldn't win. And this family stood up in front of the church, and said it this: we knew he was Satan in the flesh, but we knew you people were too unspiritual to be able to see it, so we went ahead and acted on your behalf to make sure that Satan would not get a foothold in this church. Now, do you get a definition of what the shark is? Well, call it that if you want. They were absolutely convinced the church belonged to them. They had been involved in the church when his father had been one of the key leaders, and when his father passed away, he believed it had been granted to him to lead the church, and so he could tell any pastor who came along what they needed to do in order to be able to be the pastor at that church. Until I got there, and I said, no, I know what I'm supposed to do. I happen to be pretty clear about my role, and I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and so, no, I'm not going to do that. And they came after me just as harshly as they had anybody else, except they just couldn't get the job done. They had been getting rid of pastors every 9 months for 8 years. Yeah. You can't be reconciled to sharks. It's very difficult. Very, very challenging to work with a shark? Because they're absolutely convinced they're right.
And the unfortunate reality of sharks is the only way to work something out with them is to absolutely decimate them, and it often has to be public. And then you're going to lose them and their ability to perform tasks in support of your organization, because they will just leave. But the only way to end their influence is generally to defeat them. That's how sharks are. The big eat the small.
And I had to go to every one of them and tell them I was sorry that I had hurt them. Do you follow? Somehow, just being a shark, to confront a shark, which was hinted at what you shared. I mean, it was accurate. But I'm not going to be a shark to confront a shark. Do you follow what I'm saying? Just because someone comes at you with a particular perspective of leadership or personality does not mean I have been granted the privilege of dealing with them in kind. I never said a harsh word. I never did anything except what was out in the open and exposed. They accused me of all kinds of things, like going behind the scenes and talking about them and, rallying people against them and all kinds of things. But that never happened. In my logbook, it showed every conversation I had during the entire time that they were in our church. With a description of what the conversation was and how it was handled. Now, they believed I lied about that, but a shark can be very, very destructive because, down here at the bottom, they can be paternalistic, a benevolent dictator, or an iron-fisted autocrat. Is there anything there that says loving? Christ-like. You can be a Christ-like shark. You just can't be a passionate shark, because passionate are completely self-possessed. They have an inward clock that says, I am absolutely right and never wrong. The world is black and white. I can either agree, you can agree with me, or you can go. Now, sometimes I have had people who were tending toward a shark who called themselves the sledgehammer. Okay? Why would they call themselves the sledgehammer? What kind of spiritual gifts might that assume? I'm the prophet. I'm the one proclaiming the truth. I'm the one who has God's message to proclaim. I'm going to go out here no matter what you think of me, and I'm going to pound it home every single day. I'm going to make sure you know that God doesn't like what you're doing. You ever see the movie Paint Your Wagon? Oh, no, you wouldn't have. I love movies. I have them in my head. You go rent Paint Your Wagon. The cowboy preacher at the end is the prophet that I'm talking about. I don't care. God doesn't love No Name City. I mean, I love that song. All right. And it is, I'm going to make everybody mad, but I'm going to tell the truth the way I see it. That's what the shark does. You know what? God might even give somebody that role. He did John the Baptist. He did Stephen. Elijah. God doesn't love No Name City. All right? When's it wrong to be the shark? When it's fulfilling your own self-defined needs, not God's. Not being submissive in prayer, not knowing where good stops and evil starts. It's being blinded to the person of Jesus Christ. You can be a godly person at any one of these places, but if you don't stop and say, I am this way because God gave me this personality, this style, to be used to benefit the overall body of Christ and to be a blessing to the community in which I serve, you will become a destructive force. All right? It's just not easy to sit there and filter out the bad that comes along with your good. If I ask you to raise your hand and say, did you bring a bunch of poison along with you when you walked in the door today? You would go, no, I'm fine. I'm not in the business of poisoning any relationships or anything. I'm fine. But you'll find over time, if we let our personality just run without being cleansed periodically by the Holy Spirit, we'll find that it will cause difficulties, and it will cause tensions, and it will cause conflicts within the body. Okay? Let me just give you a few questions. Turn your paper over on the back. Here it is over here. And across the top, make two columns. The X column and the check column. X column on the left and the X column on the left and the check column on the right. Okay? I'm going to ask you some questions, and you either put a check, yep, that's me, or X, that's not me. All right? I have a rich vocabulary. I look for simple truth. I have a vivid imagination. I have excellent ideas. I see things as they really are. I use words that some people think are difficult or complicated. Okay? You have an X or a check for each one of those. Now draw a line across that. Draw a line across that all the way across the page. We're going to start again, a different set of questions. I like to be always prepared. Either a check, yep, that's me, or an X, no. Those who do not plan to fail. Those who do not plan to fail. I like order in all areas of my life. I pay attention to details. I feel very guilty if I do not do what I ought to do. Got an X? All right, check mark. Line all the way across. Okay? People think of me as loud or chatty or talkative. People think of me as loud, talkative, or chatty. I like to meet new people and get acquainted with them. I don't mind being the center of attention. I need to interact with people and respond to their views. I'm the one who will usually start a conversation. And I need to express my opinions. Larry and I, that's one we share, okay? Okay, you got it? Line all the way across. Here's one. I like people to like me. Don just put a big old check mark on that one.
Was that a trick question?
No, it's not. It's an honest one. I can easily understand other people's feelings. I have a soft heart. I make people feel at ease. I openly sympathize with other people's feelings and try very hard not to hurt their feelings, even though I might disagree with them underneath. And I put myself out for others' welfare. Line all the way across. Another set of questions. I get irritated easily. I get upset frequently. I often feel blue. I worry about things. I carry a lot of stress. Okay? Thus endeth the personality exam. Let's just go through a little bit. The last ones, the ones in that last group of them, I get irritated easily. Did anybody ever have more check marks than X's in that one? More check marks? That's usually your turtle. Afraid of the world. Stressed by the world. Okay? How about the one that starts out, I like people to like me, the Don Miller. It's the next to the last one.
Is that a teddy bear?
That's a teddy bear. Mm-hmm. That's up here. I like people to like me. Yeah, more checks than X's. See, there's a combination. You're going to have some mixture of about 2 or 3. You've got parts of both. You got parts of both. Almost never are you going to have all of one and none of the other. All right? It just doesn't happen. Okay. People think of me as loud or chatty. That's that middle section, the one straight in the middle. How many have more X's? Right in the middle. Third from the top, third from the bottom. That's the extrovert. All right? That's the extrovert. That's the fox type personality. All checks. An introverted fox. Oh, Lord, forgive us. We're in trouble now. The one who likes to be prepared, the second one from the top, all checks. What was that?
Is that the owl?
Yeah. Yeah. The owl is the one who likes to be prepared, like to have everything together. Good. Okay. There's reasons why that's a good one. Do you realize as you get older, your leadership style broadens? Did you realize that? With more experience, you begin to see things in a wider perspective and a better perspective on how things fit together. And so you will find that you become less and less of a single identity and more multiphasic. You realize I did not tell you, please evaluate your pastor to tell how you think he works into this series. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because when you've been through the ringer, you'll try any leadership style if you think you might get along better. All right? You have to be willing to go with what works. The words of Paul is the ones I live with. I will become all things to all people to win a few.
That's in Romans, by the way.
What was that?
I become all things to all people so that by all means I
Win some to Christ.
win them to Christ.
To win a few to Christ. To turn them to Christ. To teach them about Christ. To get them encouraged to follow Christ.
When in Rome.
And then finally, I have a rich and open vocabulary and all the other kinds of things. That's sort of the, Which one's left out? Ah, I see things as they really are. I'm really convinced. All right? I've got a black and white outlook on the world. Okay? Now, if you see anything in your leadership style that says, I didn't know that was there. I think the first time I took this personality test, it was back in, 1978. And we were sitting around a circle of pastors, and we took the test, much like you just did, just verbally, and we just checked them off kind of as we went. And when we got done, we said, well, how do you think about what you've got there? You know, how do you respond to that? And I never will forget a very good friend of mine, I love him dearly, he said, this test has to be wrong. This test has to be absolutely wrong. I have checked off every single thing that says I'm a shark, and I can't possibly be a shark. And everybody in the room said, Al, you are a shark. Everybody knew he was a shark except Al. Because we put this blind over our eyes, and it protects us from feeling anything like being blinded means that you have stopped thinking about how Satan might be able to influence your personality to do harm. Because there's always that potential, whatever personality style you've got can actually be used to harm. All right? If you're a fox, you can manipulate people and they feel like they've absolutely been used. If you're a teddy bear, they can look at you and work you and make you feel absolutely terrible if you try to accomplish anything, and they will stop you dead in the water. You don't do anything to upset me. I'll be very unhappy with you. Remember the group that wrote to me and said there are 9 families in this Sunday school class that will leave if you teach one more class? See, a teddy bear wouldn't know how to work with that and wouldn't know how to move forward creatively. You have to be able to understand what you have been given and what its positives are and what its negatives are.